Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast, Conversations with Silicon Valley's Creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates. Hello, welcome to the Content Magazine podcast. I'm Daniel Garcia, the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates, and I'm here today with David Valdespino.
The developer of Content Magazine.
Which I have him say because I always forget. So we are here just to talk a little bit about, give you a little preview of issue 17.1, Discover, with a nice foil. You see that nice glare coming right at you, blinding you. Put your sunglasses on. The cover with King 157 artwork on it with the foil. So, so I'll start. So this issue is something I've been wanting to do for a while. It's kind of talking about kind of like the graffiti culture, kind of like of the South Bay, specifically more of San Jose, because two of the people that we feature, King 157 and Nexus, grew up here in San Jose. But I've always wanted to do something. I was never really part of graffiti or even tagging or any of that kind of stuff growing up, so it wasn't really like my thing. So when all these murals started coming up and I've started seeing an artist that we interviewed, either that have become graphic designers or have become somewhat kind of creative professionals, and finding out so many of them had their roots in kind of like bombing and writing in the streets and going out at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning and spraying on the walls.
Yep.
I was like, this is a very important kind of like creative outlet for folks. And I have to admit, my upbringing and just my kind of thing is that, especially tagging and a lot of graffiti, I do see kind of like as vandalism and visual pollution, in some ways, especially like tagging, Mm-hmm. At the same time, though, before you I do see how young folks that are trying to express their creativity and not knowing what outlet to do, it does provide them with the opportunity to build community, to practice their craft, and then meet more people, and even see it as a lot of folks are, maybe if they're in certain areas, are able to kind of avoid going down a track of being like in a gang or something like that. So it does provide, I think, a good social community and outlet, and then also especially helps develop artists. Yeah. So that's kind of why I wanted to do something on this. But what were you going to say?
No, I think that, even kind of these articles, these people that we've talked to, learning more about the graffiti culture of the South Bay, you kind of realize how space is a premium. Yeah. Even just like training in different disciplines of art, right? Like people are like, oh, keep it in the classroom. It's like, well, maybe I didn't have an art classroom, right? Or maybe I didn't have this, that, or the other. Yeah,
or maybe you're the type of person who doesn't like to be in a classroom. Like,
totally.
I know it was difficult for me to sit in class for school. So
And I think we partnered with One Culture on this pickup party and this issue, kind of as thought partners, working through these things, and even from the kind of mural trajectory that some of these graffiti artists have gone down. Yeah. Even talking to Andrew Espino from One Culture, the difficulty that it is finding legally sanctioned walls for people, even, right? So, I think there's some good quotes in there just about how graffiti is kind of like the ultimate raw creative outlet for folks. Yeah. And then we can kind of get into that too, like the distinguishing lines between street art and graffiti and the cultures that kind of intersect.
Murals,
and
right?
murals.
And there is a little bit of I don't know to say like bad blood, but there is a little bit of like anything
tension. Tension between them.
Yeah, and I think that's true. Like any kind of like art form, you start to see people kind of like segment and kind of like want to downplay one thing. But so we have a graffiti primer in there. And the reason that I always want to I've been trying to do this graffiti primer probably for like 3 years, and Joey Reyes helped me out with it. He, of course. He might or might not have been involved in graffiti bombing at a younger age. I don't know. But he's really kind of like connected in the kind of like the world. So we did a graffiti primer that kind of talks about the different terms and the different terminology that's used and kind of like the culture and like the influences and the history. It's kind of like an overview of the history of graffiti. And that was kind of like, because I feel like a lot of people are probably like me who love art or into art, but don't necessarily flow in that crowd. So
Well, and I think it's another one of those classic scenes where it's like, if you're not there,
Yeah.
then you're not there. You
Totally.
know, you don't know about it unless you're there. And I think you came into contact with that just looking for some of these pieces when you were seeing the depths when you were down in Santa Cruz trying to find images of some of these pieces that people were working on.
Yeah, and a lot of the greater kind of older stuff, even of Nexus and King 157, have already been covered up, right?
Yeah.
So been taken down. But so this graffiti primer is meant to kind of like help people see the history and kind of like be able to start to distinguish some of the different styles, influences, and looks to that. So it's a really cool layout, and I just want to thank Joey Reyes for helping kind of put that together.
Yeah. And I think that, graffiti over the last, 20 years or so has kind of gone through this kind of scholarship, right? And I was just reading something, listening to something talking about material histories and how depending on where things are valued, whether they get talked about, written about, how they're documented. And so there definitely has been a kind of evolution in the craft to be recognized in that way. So
Yeah, cool. That's totally true. Like the transition of that. That's the thing too. Is I think I wanted to do this just because, there's kind of like a moment right now for murals. You know what I mean? Every city, every like location is like trying to do that. Even we saw Los Altos is totally doing that whole mural project. We of course were a part of. Worldwide Walls, which used to be called Powwow, and Juan Carlos from Empire 7 really brought a lot of those murals here. And a lot of those people have a history in bombing and spray painting and all that kind of stuff. So, Also, too, just to let you know, this is, kind of like an overview. And there is a little bit of a outlier that I wanted to talk about. So, Jaya is in this history, and she's a fiber artist. And this is kind of me, and this is kind of like you can see. So, it doesn't fit. And if you're just looking, this is an issue just on like graffiti and murals and stuff like that. And that's just kind of my kind of personal thing of what I want content to be, is that I don't want anybody, I want people who are maybe in one scene to be exposed to something that's going on in a different scene. And I don't want people just to be like with blinders on and they only are in this type of art. Yeah. I think that there's a very important thing for artists and for the community where you can begin to appreciate other disciplines that actually will inform you. So if you are maybe you're a graffiti artist, maybe you're a tattooer, maybe you are a painter or you're a photographer, listening to some opera, you don't have to like it all the time, but listening to some opera or listening to some metal, it can help you grow as an artist. So that's why I always have a little eclectic. This is a little bit more specifically on, mainly kind of like featured around the primer and King 157 and Nexus.
Yeah. Who were,
OGs, as they say.
Yeah, developers of the craft back in the day, right? So, but I do think that talking about the eclectic nature of the issue and some of the different features that are in it, I think that is also kind of represented in graffiti culture too, right? Like there's not like a one specific, outline of what makes a graffiti artist, which I thought was really cool. There's all kinds of different pathways that people can go, right? Like just as many people that are in like the hip hop and rap scene, which is kind of, historically associated. There's so many people in the hardcore, the skate scene,
punk,
and I think that there's a lot to gain from those different kind of backgrounds, those full people that kind of create art.
And what's the good thing is because of that common kind of like art form of graffiti, street art, you see those different types of people that maybe you would think would associate are hanging out together. I love where Scotty from Santa Cruz, talks about like, they would, him and his folks down in Santa Cruz when they were younger, they would go to parties and there would be kind of like a rough scene and maybe like a little bit of gang things and some fights and stuff like that. But him and a bunch of the other graffiti people would just sit around the table drinking beers and talking about fonts and talking about spray painting, right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting that you can have these kind of like mixing things. So.
Totally, yeah. And then Scotty, is associated now with Made Fresh Crew down in Santa Cruz, a kind of a mural collective that kind of works together on getting up on big walls. So
yeah, and he's a good example. Like, right, he was down there in the local scene doing kind of graffiti stuff. Kind of like
definitely
underground.
with the skate tilt too.
Yeah, definitely skate
scene.
surf, and then like right now he's got like a couple projects for Trader Joe's or Whole Foods, I forget. One of those kind of like overpriced grocery stores. So like he's helping like do murals in the entries of those kind of stores, which is super cool. Right?
And it's funny you say that, because I went into Trader Joe's recently, and the murals that they have, even in we went to a different one. We usually go to the Coleman one, but there was a different one, and the murals in there, you start looking at murals differently. You start looking at street art and the influence and how it's kind of spread out differently when you kind of know more of the history, which I think is pretty cool.
And this is true. Like I just remember even in Barcelona, walking around and just seeing such great like murals and unsanctioned graffiti street writing and murals and stuff like that, as well as in Portugal too, and some great stuff. So I think I am excited that kind of like what has been seen as just the visual litter and the defacing is now becoming part of sanctioned art, public art.
Yeah.
Well, what else do you want to talk about this? Should we Nexus 157?
Yeah, I think from that vein of sanctioned art, I thought it was really cool, and then the mixing of mediums and different backgrounds. I think the Grand Strike mural that was featured in this issue, which was a collective of artists from varying disciplines. There were some tattoo artists, there's some fine artists, that gallery artists type creators. All worked together on this piece in downtown with friction in different ways, right? Like the wall is sanctioned for that piece of art, but then the community's response for and against the content of the wall. And so, when you read it, you'll kind of learn, but it has Dolores Huerta on it, it has Cesar Chavez on it, and then it has Itilong, the Filipino farm workers kind of advocate on there. And so they kind of talked about the friction that they went through, not just getting the wall, but also like how they were going to use their creativity and their craft to kind of uplift and create a voice. And then that one in particular was kind of the Filipino American voice in the farm workers, kind of united that was often underrepresented in history. So well, then even next, going then to kind of like collective, right? So we have the Shades of Brown Alliance. Down in Gilroy,
Yeah, down in Gilroy, which is super cool. Again, just like people coming together from different disciplines to work together on projects. They did the G-Town Funk. And so, that was kind of a cool article. So looking forward to you guys reading about that, seeing kind of like Joey's influences and his desire to bring together a group.
Yeah, definitely his background in tattoo, but kind of that idea of pooling together those different viewpoints and different creative outlets, and how we can all work together to kind of rise all ships in that sense and create
stronger
opportunities
together. And then kind of Fabrizio
Ponce.
Like this is I've been wanting to do a story on him just because he's kind of like, I think he's a little under the radar, or he hasn't been actually getting himself out there a little bit, and I really love his work. So I'm excited to have him on. And then also too, we're make sure you read about him. He's in the Citadel. Also, special thing that's going to happen at this pickup party.
Yeah, so Fabrizio is really cool. His article is I thought was really interesting, working at the Citadel, kind of changing his locations and where he's working, but pursuing art kind of number one, paramount. Like he's kind of created his life around being able to create and not create for commissions or for pop-ups, or it's because it's just fuels him.
Part of his expression.
It is lifestyle. So we actually had the opportunity to connect Fabrizio with the Foxtale Fermentation Project, which is a microbrewery downtown. Wendy and Felipe are great. They've been open for a few years now. They were in the mag like right when they opened up.
When they first opened up, they've been around doing kind of like pop-ups for quite a while.
Yes. Yeah. And so we just reached out and we're like, do you have any beers coming out? We'd love to link you with an artist that's in this issue. And then that kind of, grew into doing a limited release of 100 bottles of beer with Fabrizio's original design on it. We definitely weren't expecting Fabrizio to do an original design, but he worked with Wendy and Felipe to kind of come up with a unique piece. So at the next pickup party, in addition to having Foxtale as our kind of official beer of the event, they'll have 3 or 4 different beers on tap. There'll be 100 bottles that'll go out to the first 100 content subscribers that show up. So
there'll be 98.
98, yes, because of us.
Well, then Fabrizio's got to go, so there's 97.
97.
Well, then Andrew definitely has to get his because he's helping out. So they're going fast.
So get there early, right?
Get there early, stay there late because, The
event will start at 6 o'clock, so we'll be giving wristbands to people when they check in, and just so they don't have to carry a bottle around for the extent of the event, we'll trade wristbands for bottles at the end. So...
let's see. Do you want to talk about anything else about Nexus? I think just read Nexus and King 157. Read their article. We got a nice, cool. You can put something up on your wall, cut it out of the magazine, make a little centerfold, so to speak, and then there's the man right there.
From a personal anecdote, I showed up at one of One Culture's early openings, when they were doing the One Culture walls in the back.
Yeah, it was cool,
and it was a different worldly experience. I brought a friend from the East Bay, kind of where I grew up, and he had some background in graffiti and tagging and that kind of stuff. And black books were like a big common thing. And so he showed up and people were signing each other's black books and kind of doing little designs and everything. And he regretted so much not bringing his old book, right? So it kind of tapped into something for him. But I met Nexus out there doing this massive piece. Stopped by just standing there, and he just stops, turns around, gives me a business card. He's like, "Hey, I'm Nexus," and then just the quality and the amount of work, and what One Culture was able to put together on those walls. It's still open. The gates are usually open during the day. You can check it out right by City Hall, Santa Clara.
What is it? As 4th Street
and 4th.
Yeah.
But yeah, just seeing them, and then later hearing the stories, because they were kind of doing some presentations after they were kind of bombing in the back, and then kind of learning more about the stories. So, I mean, Nexus is known for his lettering, the 3D lettering, which was kind of unique to the South Bay at that point. And then King with his characters, and just if you read the primer, you'll kind of see the history, and kind of like the really rudimentary databases that were created in the late 90s that were documenting this work. A big part of graffiti is getting up on places where they move, right? So trains are a big popular one. So just the places that art has traveled from the South Bay, and the impact it's had around the world. I mean, we were talking to folks from Europe that had archives of King's work, right? So very prolific in the South Bay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, too. And Nexus is a good example, and even King, too. And Andrew, of course, is helping out, especially with, King. Nexus is always willing to talk to somebody when he's there kind of painting and stuff like that, and he gives out his business card because he understands, it's a network opportunity. You never know what is going to happen, right? And so he's kind of, he does his incredible lettering, but then also, too, he does these really cool, animals and you know what I mean? So he shows off that, he's an artist who can do multiple styles and multiple things.
And he pivoted early on. I think he said his last kind of unsanctioned mural was in his early 20s, right? So he knew early on that the way to make this lucrative and kind of support his family was kind of going down that mural pathway. And that was kind of long before this kind of renaissance in the last 10, 15, 20 years. So really interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. Then also, let's go to Cameron.
Yeah, Camera 1.
Yeah.
So I got to meet Cameron. He was doing
Did you write this one? No, it was Samantha.
Yeah, Samantha wrote that one. He was doing a pop-up at Creekside Socials over near the SAP Center, doing a history of graffiti course on some pop-up mural walls. But I mean, I think I mentioned this in the last one. I have a nasty habit of when I'm proofing and editing, I start going down rabbit holes. So I'm watching YouTube videos and all of this stuff that these folks have done over the years. But Cameron, kind of has that background also, kind of street art, graffiti, but really wanted to kind of harness it in a way to kind of connect with his community.
Yeah, because he teaches muraling and
so he definitely has the big community aspect with Talking Walls that he runs with his
that's right.
wife.
Yeah.
He's based up in San Francisco, but his work is everywhere. I mean, in Los Altos, like you mentioned, he has a mural down there. So
and the big one in San Jose, the what we have here featured that he did with used to be called Powwow, but Worldwide Walls, San Jose Walls. On a Target? No, it's on a Marshalls. Yeah, which is super cool. Yeah,
and then another one in there too. I was like, wasn't that in that building of the Gathering, which is like another community space in the area? And you're like, oh yeah, that's Cameron's too. So keep a lookout. Once you read these, you're going to start seeing people's work all over the place.
Yeah, and then let's go to Vicky.
La Vix.
Yeah, so breakdancer who actually was that close to being in the Olympics.
Yeah, still on the U.S. Olympic team. Representing. Also a really interesting pathway for breakdancing, right? Like even her name, she had a mentor early on. It's tradition to kind of take an aspect of your mentor's name and then integrate it into yours. So that's where the La came from in the La Vix. But yeah, that kind of physical expression in dance, which is kind of related, parallel, maybe intersecting with kind of graffiti, hip hop culture. I mean, so much of it came from like New York stylings too, but kind of cool to see that development in the same way, right? Like nobody was really expecting breakdancing to be in the Olympics.
Which unfortunately it's not going to be again, which I don't understand all the weird politics. I guess technically they do try different sports all the time.
Yes.
And so they already knew this was going to be a short
demo of it.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. I think pickleball will be in next time. Okay, speaking of pickleball, let's go to no transition. DJ Brother Reese.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's another guy. He's really super connected just kind of with that OG San Jose crowd, right? I mean, there's like a whole kind of like people who went to high school together, people who have just been hanging out for years, and so he's been in the business for a while.
And then the growth into radio, and I think that was something. I kind of try to like meticulously curate some of the soundtracks on some of these promos that we're doing. So even when we were promoing Scotty with Made Fresh in Santa Cruz, I was looking up like 90s hip hop of Santa Cruz and who were these underground people that somebody might have had a cassette for back in the day, right? And I kind of came across all these radio DJs that were also producers, that were also DJing at the nightclubs,
right?
And they were really culture setters in so many ways. And so DJ Brother Reese is the same, right?
Totally.
Venom, who is another DJ that was on the radio, and this kind of whole community of culture setters that maybe somebody was breakdancing to, maybe somebody was painting a wall to, you know. Maybe somebody had it in their studio. So.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I mean, like unless you're in that, like we were talking kind of in the beginning, unless you're in that kind of like scene, you don't even know what's going on. And there's so many sub scenes. Like even like Jai, like the fiber art is such an incredible art form. Do you know what I mean? That people don't even know, and it's a whole underground. I mean, definitely the San Jose Quilts and Textile Music showcases stuff that you think like, oh, it's gonna be stupid quilts. You go in there and you're blown away what people are doing with kind of like 3D and different materials and stuff like that. So, you're driving down the street, you can see a mural or even some graffiti, and maybe now when you read the primer, you can be like, oh, I could see, that's like a Wild Style or something like that, or recognize the name.
Yeah, and then I think one more pin kind of in Jaya's story also. I had seen Jaya a while back because she's at Cubberley in Palo Alto, part of the residency program there. And so I had seen some like natural fiber dyeing workshops by Jaya way back, like a couple years ago when I was first starting with the magazine. And then had kind of like seen her name pop up here and there, but definitely like the community aspect that she has to her work also. Like that's a big kind of portion of what she's doing also.
And it's fun too because textile and weaving is such an old craft, but she's using like a high-tech printer for the, you know what I mean? So it's kind of fun to see those kind of like
doing like pixelated images in fiber is like pretty phenomenal.
So tell us a little bit about the pickup party. I think we're having a pickup party on Friday, November 22nd.
The 22nd,
I'll have to check my calendar if I can be there.
6 to 9 o'clock in partnership with the Santa Clara County Fairgrounds, who offered us this amazing hall that we were tasked with filling. It's a massive location. And then we worked with One Culture to kind of curate the exhibition, the gallery exhibition that's going inside, which I'll touch on more. And then we reached out to Culture Night Market, Brandon, who BQ, who has been on the podcast previously, so go check that out. You want to learn more. But they're curating the food trucks for us with their Feast Mode project. So there's going to be 3 food trucks out there. It'll be kind of a full multi-level event. And then, like I said, we'll have Foxtale kegs on tap and wine and all that stuff.
There'll be a break dancing presentation, DJ from the SOBA Collective. And then tell us about what's happening for art.
Yeah, so we have 20 artists that are booked to fill the space. So we have 12 massive panels that kind of run parallel each side of the warehouse or the hall. And they're 18-foot wide by 15-foot tall. So it's a big canvas to work on. And we just assigned people walls. So folks like Jaya and Fabricio are coming in with work that they've already created. And it's really cool because people are excited to
it's going to
be able to showcase big work. Like how often do you have, you have 18 feet to like figure this out, right? So Jaya has some giant pieces, Fabricio as well. And then there's some other folks.
That's been previously issued, featured,
previously featured in the magazine, kind of in that street art, large scale.
Whisper,
Messenger. RC, who was on a cover last year. Manic. I'm really excited to have Manic in there. He's got a 7-foot by 7-foot square circle that he's bringing in.
Abel with
Driftin'. So there's some panels that were kind of part of like a one-time only Santa Clara County Fairgrounds mural exhibition. So we're going to be putting those out there again to be able to spotlight them and get them some more play. And then some original pieces, which people will be painting ahead of time, and then some installations as well. And so there'll be the 12 panels on each wall, or 6 on each wall, and then we'll have some pop-up triangle murals with some like 4-foot by 8-foot pieces, and then a massive 12-foot wall in the middle of the space.
Oh, that's right. With
one side will be Nexus, OG of the graffiti scene, and then the other one will be King 157, which will be
and Wendy from Liminal Space will have some stuff there. And then also too, I just want to thank Augie, who kind of helped me find some different places in Santa Cruz to kind of like take some photos for like the primer and also for the Santa Cruz. And he's going to have
and Augie WK will have some walls up there from Jam's brand, and so it'll be a real showcase of kind of
it's going to be awesome.
Folks that have been in the magazine, people that are in this current issue, and then maybe a couple people that are on the radar for future issues. And then, like you said, the stage, there'll be a stage. We have DJ, SOBA Collective. Edward will be out there spinning vinyl. He has soul. He has lowrider type stuff. And then he's bringing some boxes of records to sell on the side.
He is going to do that.
Yeah, so we'll have some record swap action,
nice.
Kind of merging cultures. And then about halfway through the night, Vicky unfortunately can't be there, La Vix, but her crew, Elephant Graveyard, will be there, and they're going to do like a 5 to 10 minute set.
What time will that be?
About 7:15ish, 7:30.
So you got to get there in time to get the first one. Well, the first 95 people got to get there to get their bottle reserved. And then you got to get there in time to see the breakdancing.
And you got to make sure you have time to get some food too, because those lines are going to get long too. So make sure you get out there to the fairgrounds on Friday, November 22nd. 6 p.m. Don't be late, rain or shine. Parking at Gate C at the fairgrounds, free parking. We'll make sure that we do like a cool map with the thing. This is where you enter. It's like on Old Tully, kind of like, there's the big arch, but if you keep on going down that street, it's kind of the side. So it's back in that kind of area. I think that's it. Make sure you get a copy if you're not a member already. One final thing here, right? Typically we have color themes going on. Right, we usually do the blue and the orange and the brown. This one's pink. Yeah. And in addition to the pink, you have that kind of shimmery cover to it, which is what was the thought behind the pink? Quite honestly, I've been wanting to just do a foil and this pink forever. I mean, I love this pink for whatever reason. I just really like it. I like it with black. And I don't know. I just want to do it. And then, want to do something kind of special for
King, and so he did this artwork for the cover, Step Into My World, and then and so we just this was the time to do it.
Awesome.
That's kind of. And then next issue, which is our 69th issue.
Yeah.
Our 70th issue, I'm already talking to the printer about trying to do something kind of cool for the cover. And that Pick a Party, we already got that set. It's March 14th at the City Hall, Rotunda.
In the Rotunda.
So make sure you get out to that. Put that on your calendar right now.
March 14th.
But hopefully we'll see you all on Friday, November 22nd. If you're not a member, become a member. You can go to our website and do that. And again, just want to thank all the contributors, the editors, the writers, the photographers, just everybody who's involved to make this happen. 69th issue, 12th year, going to 13th year? I don't know.
Yeah.
2012 minus
and you've had
2025.
Contributors that have been with us for the long haul,
Yeah,
man.
Brandon, Roos, Nathan. So many people have been around. Really, Esther's been there for a while now. Like a lot of, actually, it's surprising how much time has gone by. So it's really good. So make sure you get a copy of it, and see you at the Pick a Party. Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the South Bay creatives.